Assalamualaikum. Today's topic is IELTS Listening Part-4, taken from Cambridge Book 12, Test 7. Let's start. At the very beginning, we will read the instructions here written. Complete the notes below using one word only. So your answer is going to be one word. Okay. Next, we will read the topic line. The topic line is that the effects of environmental change on birds. That means effects environmental change on birds. So for the changing environment, how birds are getting affected, that is our topic. Next, we will not read the whole para because you will not get enough time before playing the audio. So you have to finish the sentence where the question is containing. Okay, what the question is. So you have to read 31 to 40 the question first. So it has also recently been found to affect birds which feed on. It means what? Mercury. You have one subheading mercury. So in this para the audio will say about mercury, and it has also recently been found to affect birds which feed on. Feed on means eat. Okay, so birds eat something. So we are going to listen here about a food. If you read the question and if you want to answer it quickly, then you have to guess according to the meaning of the sentence. Okay, next 32. 32 here, research on effects of mercury on birds. So here again research. Whose research? Claire Varian Ramos is investigating that the effects on birds dash or mental process, for example memory. So we are going to hear that she is investigating on birds mental process and for example memory, and birds something else, mental process and something. Okay, then 33 is here. We'll read this, the effects on bird song. So now we are going to listen about bird song. Usually learn from a bird. So which song is the bird learning from whom? From whom? So our answer is going to be a noun. Then our question is in 34. So the question line is that songs learned by birds exposed to mercury add less. So those songs which are learning by birds, those are exposed to mercury. Birds exposed to mercury, their songs are less. Okay, their songs are less what? Okay, this may have a negative effect on birds. Again apostrophe s, after apostrophe s you will listen a noun. Okay, and the sentence is telling that this may have a negative effect. Okay, negative effect. So negative effect. So what is causing negatively or what is hampering birds? What? Okay, lab-based studies. So when they will talk about lab-based studies, that lab-based studies allow more. Allow means here that is providing or giving benefit more what? More what? For the experimenter. You will not you listen the same word here. They will not use the same word here. Maybe they will use the paraphrase of this sentence, or they will use the synonyms of these words. So when the audio will go on, try to hear the synonyms and try to hear the paraphrase and try to understand the meaning of the sentence. Okay, then 37. In 37's, migrating birds such as, so here written such as, this is our clue word. So after such as you will listen a name of a bird. What type of bird? Migrating birds. And such as means, for example, they will say something like the for examples, or they may can say like, migrating birds like. So listen that, no need to read more. Okay, and you can read. Okay, let's read. Containing mercury may be eaten by humans. So which migrating birds? Those birds containing mercury may be eaten by humans. Okay, mercury also causes problems in learning something. So mercury causes problems in learning something. Mercury in mother's body from dash may affect the unborn child. So mother's body from, so it will be a source where from where mother's body getting the mercury, and that mercury affecting the unborn child, the child that hasn't come yet. Okay, so unborn child. Then new regulations for mercury emissions. New regulations for mercury emissions will affect everyone's Everyone's energy, what? Everyone's energy. Okay, so let's listen the audio, then we will again discuss on the answer. Now your part is that touch the pencil. Whenever you listen any word, then tick it or underline it, whatever you can do, but don't miss any line, because if you miss any line, if you miss the audio, then you will be nervous. So that's why don't try to go beyond the audio. So try to remain each bullet point. They will discuss everything here, but they will not discuss the same line. They will discuss it in a paraphrase, or they will use synonyms of these words. Let's start.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Okay, so we've been looking at how man-made changes in our environment can affect wildlife. Now, I'll discuss a particular example. Let's take a look at mercury. Mercury's one of the 120 or so elements that make up all matter, and it has the symbol Hg. It's a shiny, silvery substance. You may have seen it in old-fashioned thermometers, but it's not used much for domestic purposes now because it's highly toxic. But the problem is that the amount of mercury in the environment's increasing. The main reason for this is the power plants used to produce electricity. The main source of energy that most of them use is still coal, and when it's burned, it releases mercury into the atmosphere. Some of this gets deposited into lakes and rivers, and if it's ingested by a fish, it's not excreted. It stays in the fish's body, and it enters the food chain. So, it's been known for some time that birds which eat fish may be affected. But what wasn't known until quite recently is that those that eat insects can also be affected. So, a woman called Claire Varian Ramos is doing some research on how this is affecting birds. And rather than looking at how many birds are actually killed by mercury poisoning, she's looking for more subtle sub-effects. And these may be to do with the behaviour of the birds, or with the effect of mercury on the way their brain works. So, whether it leads to problems with memory, for example. And she's particularly focusing on the effects of mercury on bird song. Now, the process of song learning happens at a particular stage in the bird's development. And what you may not know is that a young bird seems to acquire this skill by listening to the songs produced by its father, rather than by any other bird. And Varian Ramos has already found in her research that if young male birds are exposed to mercury, if they eat food contaminated with mercury, then the songs they produce aren't as complex as those produced by other birds. So, quite low-level exposure to mercury is likely to have an impact on male birds in a natural situation, because it can mean that they're less attractive to female birds, and so it can affect their chances of reproduction. Now, the way she's carrying out this research is worth thinking about. She's using a mixture of studies, using birds kept in laboratories and studies carried out outdoors in the wild. The lab-based studies have the advantage that you don't get all the variables you would in a natural setting. So the experimenter has a much higher level of control, and that means they can be more confident about their results in some ways. And of course, they don't have to worry about going out and finding the birds in order to observe them. So, what are the implications here for humans? Well, because many birds are migratory, they may be transporting mercury far from contaminated sites. For example, it's been found that ducks who'd been feeding at a contaminated site were later shot by hunters over 1,000 kilometres away and presumably eaten. But these birds likely had mercury levels high enough to warrant concern for human consumption. In addition, going back to song learning by birds, we saw that this may be affected by mercury contamination. Well, we also know that in humans, mercury causes developmental delays in the acquisition of language. And in fact, this process is very similar in the brain regions it involves, and even the genes that are involved. But mercury contamination has other important implications for humans as well. It's now known that an unborn child can be affected if the food eaten by its mother contains high levels of mercury, and these effects can be quite substantial. In the end, it comes down to whether more value is placed on human economic well-being or environmental well-being. It's true there are new regulations for mercury emissions from power plants, but these will need billions of dollars to implement and increase costs for everyone. Some argue that's too much to pay to protect wildlife. But as we've seen, the issues go beyond that, and I think it's an issue we need to consider very carefully.
So recently they feed on what? Insects. We listen this insect. At the beginning there's a fish, but not fish, because they use the recently, and here also we demand recent recent findings. Okay, so insects is our answer. Next, she says that we listen that behavior. She, at the very beginning, she says about the bird's behavior, then she talks about mental process, and she also say about the memory. We listen these words. Okay, then 33, we listen affairs, bird song, and when that little bird learns from its father. So here in place of birds we listen its father. Okay, so our answer is father. Then 34, songs, when the audio was talking about the songs learning, then we listen songs, birds exposed to mercury, and that is they said that here written less complex, and in the audio we listen that that is songs produced by them, that is aren't they use, and they say aren't as complex as other birds. Okay, other birds song. Okay, so that means here written are less complex, and they say aren't as complex as. So we here the answer complex. Then 35, they talk about the birds, but they talk about the male birds. Here written birds, but it will be male birds. What's the problem? The problem is that it affects the male birds reproduction. Okay, they said that it affects the their chances of reproduction. Okay, that means it's the negative effect, reproduction or breeding problem. Okay, then we hear lab based studies, the audio says. Then in place of allow, we say that it gives them the opportunity, and in place of more we listen, that is it has much higher. In place of more we listen much higher. So whenever they say much higher, then we understand that our answer is very close. Okay, so the answer is much higher control. They use the word control. Okay, then 37, they use in place of such as, for example, they says migrating, about the migrating birds, and in place of humans we listen hunters. Okay, they use hunters, the word hunters. Okay, and then name the bird's name, that is ducks. And in 38, we listen that mercury causes problems. Causes, this word we listen, but in place of problems they say development, delays development. Okay, problem. And in place of learning they say acquisition. Acquisition means learning. Okay, so they use the word acquisition, ACQUISITION. Acquisition means learning. Okay, so learning what? Acquisition, language. Okay, then 39, they say about unborn child, and they say the source of mother's mercury that comes from food. Okay, the answer will be food. And at last we'll listen about new regulations, mercury emissions. Okay, and in place of energy they use power plant. Okay, power plant, now the word the power plant. And they say that it will increase everyone's cost. Okay, everyone's cost. Okay, that's all. I